Chapter 2 is looking at how to design a healthy eating pattern. So we'll be looking at what constitutes healthy versus unhealthy and some different food choices we can make to improve our patterns. Of course, starting with the study guide that you can use. Again, this is posted in eCampus, but just so you can see some of the things we'll be learning about in this chapter. So looking at the first section, kind of just a philosophy that works. So some benefits of eating fruits and vegetables, some different concepts of the nutrient density. So we'll be learning about nutrient density and energy density and how to calculate those, and then just some changes that we can make to improve that. So a philosophy that works, so the same basic dietary principles have been recommended for years. So this is nothing new. Now the MyPlate compared to the food pyramid is slightly different, but really the overall idea and philosophy has not changed. Some of those basic principles though, your nutritional needs primarily come from foods and beverages. That's where most of our nutrients come from. A variety of options in each group is best. And this becomes particularly hard if you only like one or two vegetables. So again, incorporating a variety of different vegetables, a variety of different proteins and fruits, that is the best choice. And then the other really important thing is paying attention to portions, because that's then, of course, what determines the amount that's taken in and can increase our calorie intake over our calorie need, which can lead to becoming overweight. So again, back to a variety here. So again, choosing foods first of all from all of the food groups. So our fruits, vegetables, grains, proteins, and dairy. It's important to have all of those. Again, lots of diets may be like cutting out protein or cutting out carbs or something. You never want to completely cut any of those out. Now, decreasing, again, as long as you are maintaining the proper nutrients is okay. But again, never eliminating any of these. And then, no one food meets all of those nutritional needs. So we need a variety of each from each of these categories. So again, eating from all 5 categories every day is recommended. Of course, we need balance. So whenever we talk about nutrient dense food, so first of all, balance here is just referring to eating more nutrient dense foods, such as, again, our fruits, vegetables, whole grains, our milk, fat-free or low fat milk products, and then eating fewer foods that are high in fats, sugars, cholesterol, salt, and alcohol. So increasing the first group, decreasing the second. Balance is also referred to as proportionality. So you may here eat a more proportional diet or a well-balanced diet. That's what it's talking about, is getting plenty of foods from that first group, decreasing the amount from the second group. And then, of course, matching your energy intake with energy expenditure. So if you have a more sedentary lifestyle or job, you don't need as many calories as if you have a very active lifestyle. So determining some of these calculations. So first of all, nutrient density. Here we're looking at the overall contribution. So the amount of nutrients per serving divided by the amount of calories per serving. So again, if we're eating really sugary or drinking a really sugary drink, there's a lot of calories in that. There's very little nutrients. So that's going to be a low nutrient density product. Whereas if we have something that has a lot of nutrients, a lot of proteins, a lot of carbs, and that kind of equals out to our calories, that's going to be a more dense, nutrient dense food. So again, it's generally determined with respect to the individual nutrients. And then always whole, fresh fruit. So again, apples, bananas, all of that are going to be more nutrient dense than fruit juice. because again, there is still some fruit and nutrients in the fruit juice, but we have the added sugar that's in there, so that increases the calories and it makes it a less dense source of those nutrients. So just some swaps that can be made to increase that density. So instead of eating the frosted shredded wheat down here that has, of course, the extra sugar, which makes it taste better, but switching that out with just plain shredded wheat, now the calories go down because we're decreasing that sugar and that increases the density. Of course, switching out if you're eating yogurt, switching to a low fat version compared to a full fat that has those added sugars. Again, we may be getting the same amount of nutrients, but now we've added in some extra calories that are going to decrease that density. Low sodium black beans versus regular canned that have a lot of sodium in them. Again, that decreases that density. Switching to our oils instead of our butters gives us more nutrients per calorie. And then soda is one of the worst, just because very few nutrients, but a lot of calories come from that. So switching that out, if you just really like the carbonation, switching to a sparkling water that decreases or even eliminates those calories. Also, again, portion size, so that nutrient density and portion size, two main factors here to pay attention to. So the portion size is just the amount of food that's consumed in one eating occasion versus the serving size. So that's found on the nutritional label, but actually how much you eat, that's your proportion. The serving size is on that nutrition fact label. But that can help determine what the appropriate portion size could be. So if you're, if you have a small bag of chips, if you're eating chips and you're eating a smaller bag compared to like a whole big bag, again, those serving size kind of give you an idea of the proportions. So now though, if we look at the energy density, this is going to be the amount of energies or kilocalories per serving divided by the weight or the volume. So how many grams, how many milliliters, and then again, what are the calories per gram or the calories per milliliter that's in there? That gives us our energy density. Again, nutrient density is nutrients divided by calories. Energy density is calories divided by the weight or the volume. So looking at some of the energy density, so very low energy nutrients, very low energy density. So things like broths, fruits, salsa, skim milk, vegetables, that's going to be on our lower energy density. If we look though on the other end where we have a lot of calories per gram, these are going to be less healthy. So our bacons, our butters, chips, again, we're getting a lot of calories for every gram. So again, consuming one portion of bacon compared to an apple, we're getting a lot more calories in that piece of bacon. So that increases the energy density. So we want to have nutrient dense, high nutrient density. We want to have low energy density foods. So now section 2 is looking at some of the dietary and physical guidelines. So we're going to be talking about some of these guidelines that are recommended for different stages of life. That's where we'll actually end this semester, talking about differences between infancy, adolescence, and then adulthood, even during pregnancy. And then again, thinking about physical activity. So what is recommended? So those healthy eating patterns, just by definition, an eating pattern is a combination of food or beverages that constitute an individual's complete dietary intake over time. So again, we're not just talking about, a cheat meal or something like this. This is the pattern is over time. So just a few different kind of patterns that are out there. So the healthy U.S. style. We'll also talk about a Mediterranean style, and of course there are vegetarian. And so there are healthy choices for all of these patterns. So the HEI stands for Healthy Eating Index. We'll see a lot of acronyms here to understand and know what they go along with. But HEI is Healthy eating index, and that's just a measure of the diet quality, and that can be used to determine compliance. So are we meeting those dietary guidelines or not? So how good is our HEI, healthy eating index? All right, so some of those key recommendations, and I know this is pretty small, but so following a healthy dietary pattern early, or at every life stage. So about the first 6 months, you're of course exclusively fed human milk. Then about 6 months is whenever they start introducing nutrient dense complementary foods. So again, oatmeals, rice, that type of thing. And then of course by 12 months, through our older adolescence or adulthood, this is where those eating patterns really start to cross into the lifespan and get established. And then they can also either increase or decrease that risk of chronic disease. So then our next one here, so customize and enjoy nutrient dense foods. Again, lots of nutrients per calorie, and beverages, reflecting on those personal preferences, thinking about cultural traditions, and then of course also budgetary, so what can be afforded. So again, making the healthiest choice based on what you like to eat, what's available to you, and what you can afford to eat, and reflecting on that. And that might change throughout your life. Then also focusing on meeting those food groups needs with, again, those nutrient dense foods. So staying away with or staying within those calorie limits. So again, lots of different fruits and vegetables in there, grains, dairy. So again, thinking about the My Plate that's coming up here, staying within there and limiting the sugars and the fats and the salt. So limiting all of those. So again, staying away from sugars, saturated or animal fats, salt or sodium, and then limiting alcoholic beverages. All of these help set up and maintain that healthy pattern. So this is just kind of looking, for each one. This definitely is not a test question here, but just to give you kind of an idea of where we're at. So the intake below, so we're starting here at 0. So anything below is where we're at, where we're not eating enough of that. And then again, anything above is where we're consuming too much. So the intake's above recommendation. So you can see we're way below our total vegetables. Also that all across the board pretty much, again, below where we should be as far as our fruits and our grains. So again, there's room for improvement across the United States in all of these to get us back to those recommended guidelines. And this is just giving some different estimated calorie needs. Again, not a test question, just kind of looking at the changes. And again, different depending on our jobs and just our lifestyle, looking at sedentary versus active lifestyles. And then of course, as we move, as our age changes, our calories are going to change as well. So this is just kind of a neat little guideline to look at. So these food components to include, so these are things we want to have in our diet, and then we'll do the opposite here. So things we really want to include, again, vegetables, but also a variety of vegetables. So not just eating broccoli, not just eating carrots, but a variety of those. Again, fruits, especially whole fruits instead of fruit juices. Having grains, at least half of that should be whole grains. We'll talk more about what whole grains are, including that dairy, but especially the fat-free or low fat, and that can be milk, cheese, yogurts, some soy beverages, and then again that protein, but again a variety of that. So we can get protein from seafood or lean meats, from chicken and poultry, from eggs and beans. So lots of different sources of those. And we do want to include the oils instead of the butters because we do need a fat source. So oils are the preferred source. Now, what we should stay away from what we want to limit in our diet. Again, those saturated fats, which are mainly the animal fats, we want to have less than 10% of our overall kilocalories. Again, that added sugars. So we're not talking about the sugars naturally found in our fruits or other sources, but these are added sugars. So whenever sugar is added to increase the taste, those are things we want to stay away from. Again, and then our salt or our sodium, so less than 2.3 kilograms or sorry, grams, so our milligrams here. And then if consuming alcohol, again, should be consumed in moderation. Of course, legal drinking age, what that's referring to, again, moderation is different depending on who you ask. But up to a drink or so a day for females and maybe up to 2 for males a day. So again, just kind of looking at some swaps here. So, consuming bread for sandwiches or whatever, just switching from white to whole wheat to increase that whole grain. The cereal, again, we had the frosted flakes or the shredded wheat. So again, switching to the low sugar, high fiber cereals. With the cheeseburger and fries instead. Still have the hamburger, that's okay, but kick out the cheese in that scenario. And then also switching to baked beans to increase that variety of our protein. Instead of potato salad, again, switching those potatoes out for beans. Instead of donuts, switching to a bran muffin or a bagel. And instead of soft drinks, switching to water or unsweetened beverages. A few other nice swaps. So instead of boiling the vegetables, steaming them, that helps maintain the vitamins. Instead of canned, which has the added salt, use fresh or frozen vegetables instead of frying the meats, baking or broiling. Instead of the processed meats, instead use, beef, chicken, or fish. Instead of whole milk, switch to the low fat or fat free. Instead of mayo or cream-based dressings, switch to the oil and vinegar or a light creamy dressing. So again, just some of these are some somewhat easy things to switch to. If you don't like beans, of course, that's going to be hard. Of course, it's not going to taste exactly the same, but it is worth the health benefits in the end. I'm just kind of looking here at our farm to fork, this little section I do enjoy. So looking at our citrus fruits. So as far as growing them, again, most nutrient dense is white, has a white inner membrane pith. Most is grown actually in California, Arizona, and Texas. And actually most orange juice comes from Florida. That's probably not too surprising. Whenever you're shopping for citrus fruit, you want to buy the largest citrus that has the deepest color. So that darker color, just like with our tomatoes, indicates the most nutrients. It's had more time to ripen on the tree, and it enhances or increases the amount of nutrients. So enjoying them soon after purchase or refrigerate them. If you don't eat your oranges within a week, it's actually better to squeeze them to make juice out of them. As far as prepping for food, you can add some citrus zest. So from the peeling, right in there for some, a little splash of flavor. Slicing the citrus is really good to put on salads. Again, it adds those phytochemicals, not one of our main nutrients, but it definitely has some health benefits to it. So some of the physical guidelines for Americans, and this was published by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Resources. They updated this in 2018. So this measurable physical activity, and this is for individuals 3 and older. So for adults, the health benefits occur whenever we have about 150 to 300. That's a pretty big range, but at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity. And again, we can accumulate that in a variety of ways. So that doesn't just have to mean working out. But again, if you are walking for work or you walk to the grocery store and you park farther away than right beside the store. So any of that activity counts. It doesn't have to be, an actual exercise routine. And then kids and adolescents should have 60 minutes per day. And that's, again, cumulative activity. Also kind of taking a little break here to look at this microbiome. And that microbiome includes all the bacteria and microbes that are in our body. So while we have a lot of our own human cells, we're learning more and more about this microbiome, which is all of the bacteria. It's called normal flora. And they're good things. They help prevent infection. So we're learning more about having a good set of microbes to help protect us. And the reason we're talking about it here is because physical activity is shown to have an impact on that microbiome. So it increases the beneficial species, it increases diversity, so lots of different types of microbes, like different bacteria, archaea, some different fungi even. So this enhances short chain fatty acid synthesis, which is a better type of fat, and it can improve our metabolism of carbohydrates because again, those gut microbes help break down our food. So activity can increase and alter the bacteria and the microbes that we have. All right, so now getting into this MyPlate. So just kind of looking at where we would find the major groups, and kind of looking at this Mediterranean diet. So this MyPlate, and you can find that by going to myplate.gov. Pretty easy to find it. Again, it used to be the food pyramid, but we have moved to this MyPlate. So it has 5 food groups that are seen here. So of course we have our fruits and vegetables. You see that makes up half of what our plate should be. Then our grains, proteins, and then also including the dairy in that. So then if we look kind of at this as far as making healthy recommendations, so focusing on things that work for you. Again, this eating style should have that low saturated fat, low sodium, and low added sugar. So use those nutritional facts to help you make good decisions, and just making small changes to create healthy lifestyles. Again, these fad diets are not sustainable, so a lot of people may lose weight and then they just pack it all back on plus some. So again, making realistic changes to our diet, small changes at a time, not just eliminating everything, but just cutting back a little bit at a time from our salt or decreasing sugar over time. It doesn't have to be a cold turkey approach. And this is just kind of looking at a typical 2,000 calorie diet. Again, that goes back to that table we'd seen, depending on our age and how active we are, male or female, that determines what our calorie intake should be. But for a 2,000 calorie diet, we should have per day 2 cups of fruits. We should have 2.5 cups of vegetables, about 6 ounces of a grain, 5.5 ounces of protein, and about 3 cups of dairy each day. So what does that really kind of equate to? So a cup of fruit, so of course a cup of whole fruit kind of cut up, or a cup of fruit juice, or half a cup if it's dried fruit would be about the same. So for our vegetables, again, raw is a little bit better. It maintains those vitamins, but raw or cooked vegetables. Could also use vegetable juice here, but actually if we're using those raw leafy greens like lettuces or kale, you actually need 2 cups to actually constitute that requirement. And then our equivalents as far as ounces related to grains, so a slice of bread, a cup of breakfast cereal, or half a cup of pasta, rice, or cereal. And then the ounce equivalent of our proteins, so again, an ounce of meat, fish, so an egg would be an ounce, a tablespoon of nut butter, some legumes. So again, all of these are just kind of giving you an idea of what this relates to. I think a better way of looking at it is kind of thinking about a standard objects to help us see these. So if we have a tennis ball here, that's about a half a cup of fruit. So our little tennis ball is about a half a cup to 2/3 cup of a fruit. Our softball is about a cup of vegetables. So if you're dipping out onto your plate, thinking about the area of a softball. A hockey puck is about like a slice of bread. So thinking about those potatoes or pastas. If we look at the protein, so a deck of cards, is about 3 ounces of meat, so it's about a half a cup to 3/4 of a cup. And then our fats and our dairy, so if we think about 2 dice, that's kind of where we want to be. That's about 2 tablespoons. So again, thinking about portion size and just kind of, not too many people are going to measure out all of their food, but thinking about them with these relatable objects kind of give us a better idea about portion, so that we can control that to control our calorie intake. Not all dairy is the same. So the yellow here represents added calories that we get from fat and sugar that are in various. So again, the best would be our fat-free skim milk. And then we have our low fat, 1% milk, 2% whole milk, and even low fat chocolate milk, which kind of sounds good. Like, oh, I can have my chocolate, it'll taste good, and it's low fat, that's good. Unfortunately, you can see here it's actually the worst one that's on here because of all of that added sugar and added calories from the chocolate. All right, so we think about menu planning here. So again, the My Plate is just a visual representation of those guidelines. It just helps with dietary planning for individuals 2 and older, but it cannot stand alone as far as dietary advice. Again, it doesn't indicate a variety of foods. So some of the limitations, again, it doesn't have information about overall calories, serving sizes, or the number of servings. Again, it doesn't address types of foods to choose. So again, some proteins are better than others. So it's giving you an idea of proportions or how much for each one. But it doesn't address the total diet that could include snacks as well. So this is just kind of looking at one meal at a time. All right, so if we continue here, so again, choosing primarily low fat, fat-free items in our dairy is good. Using plant foods as a source of protein. We keep hearing more and more about plant-based proteins and different options that are becoming more and more available. Having dark green and orange vegetables increases our vitamins that we're bringing in. Again, using whole grain varieties instead of the processed or the enriched, using plant oils instead of those solid butters, using those nutrient-dense whole food philosophy. But again, variety here is going to be key. Eating lots of different types of protein, lots of different grains, etc. So if we look here at kind of giving a sample meal here. So this My Plate kind of build a meal that we have here. So again, looking at our vegetables, so 1 cup of raw, cooked, or canned, or those 2 cups of leafy greens, or some vegetable juice. So again, adding in that variety that we could choose from here. Again, our fruits, we want to have a cup of raw, frozen, kind of canned, or that cup of fruit juice. So again, lots of variety that could be included. So we pretty much all are familiar with our fruits and vegetables. Of course, our grains, of course, bread, but also our rice, cereal, some oats and pasta all fall in there. Lots of different sources of protein, so beans and eggs, fish, peanuts, poultry, soybeans, tofu. Lots of variety with those proteins are best. And then our dairy, so of course our milk products, cottage cheese, yogurts, as well as various types of cheese are good. Now the Mediterranean diet, that pyramid looks a little bit different. So this is mainly using plant sources as the foundation for every meal. So lots of variety in the fruits and vegetables, using healthy fats like olives, olive oil, avocados, nuts, and seeds. Again, this is with every meal. Eating legumes at least twice a week, whole grains, so in every meal up to about 4 servings a day. Eating a lot of fish that's in there, and then the lean poultry, meats or eggs, just 1 per week. So again, mainly focusing on those plant sources for protein, and then a low-fat dairy, about 3 servings a day. So this is kind of what that ends up looking like. So of course, still being physically active and enjoying our meals together as part of that Mediterranean. But again, the bulk of that is going to be plant-based, so lots of fruits and vegetables, but plants as far as providing a lot of the protein. Again, most of the other protein, though, comes from fish and seafood. So again, very limited amounts of red meat, and of course sweets. But then other poultry and eggs, or cheese for the dairy, there as well. So drinking lots of water. So a lot of people are kind of switching to this more Mediterranean diet, so we hear more and more about it. So then last part of this one before we wrap up this lecture, I'm just looking at some of these nutritional health concepts. So if we look at some terms here, so nutritional status, this is just the health determined by anthropometric measurements, biochemical measurements. We'll look at what each of these are. Some clinical examination, dietary analysis, economic evaluation. This is also referred to as our nutritional state. So it's kind of a holistic idea, not just the food that we're consuming. So then some other terms, malnutrition. So this indicates failing health from long-standing dietary practice where we don't meet those nutritional needs. So again, not just once or twice, but this is over a long period of time, not having enough nutrients in our diet. There's also overnutrition, which indicates that nutritional intake greatly exceeds our body's needs. And of course, that would lead to obesity. So we're taking in more than we need. And then there's also undernutrition, which is different. So again, our malnutrition. So again, we're not, for a long standing, not meeting those nutritional needs. Undernutrition is again failing that health as a result of long standing intake that's not enough to meet those nutritional needs. So again, this is more related to our intake versus our output, so exercise versus gain. So malnutrition is indicating we're not getting enough nutrients. Undernutrition is indicating we're not consuming enough to meet our energy needs. And then just a nice little graph here to look at it. So again, undernutrition, just again, we're not getting enough. We are putting out more energy than we're taking in nutrients. So some of that, again, declined body function. We're going to be tired, but also our body's not going to get enough oxygen. It's not going to get enough nutrients, and will lead to that fatigue. Whereas overnutrition, having too much, again, that can be toxic. We have too much iron, too many minerals, and it causes problems with our liver. So we want to be in that optimal nutrition state to maintain a healthy lifestyle.